Hi up girls. Welcome to the last project video. I will be doing this in two parts, only because I feel that the beginning operations that I'm going to do tonight are preliminary and they're the more tedious of the operations. And then I will conclude with another video that has the finishing operations on this particular project. This is the pattern that I'm using today. Unfortunately, you all have different patterns, I think. I don't exactly know, but there are definitely not, we're not all going to do the same thing. It's fine. Whatever you do, utilize the instructions that came with the pattern and follow those and execute the shirt the way that the instructions tell you to. If you have any questions, certainly email me and maybe I could create a smaller video just for you in your particular situation. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. We cannot use the pattern that comes in for this shirt in the department. We don't have access to an overlock machine. So there's a lot of things, compromises that we have to make when we execute the shirt. So let's get down to the actual execution of the shirt. This shirt it's a man's shirt. It has a yoke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the back pleat. Now, of course, I've done a little preliminary right by doing some of the pressing and pinning, but basically what I'm doing is, let me show you. Whatever you do, pay particular attention to your notches. Believe me, if you don't do the notches properly, your shirt is not going to turn out right. The collar is going to be all the way off to the one side. You got to stick with the notches. So my notches here, there's 3 of them. There's the 2 end notches come to meet the notch in the center. And there's 2 ways to do this. The way I'm doing it is to just pin it and I'm going to stitch it across. If you choose, you could turn it like a dart. Sew it 1 inch down and there's your pleat. Why don't I do that? Only about 1 inch down, and that's enough. Okay. Then you'll fold it in half so that half of the pleat is on one side, half's the other. Now, what I might do is, for the sake of doing it properly, when we put the yoke on, I'm going to stitch it down. Basting stitch, whatever, no back tack or any of that. And that will do the job. Now, so that's the back piece. Let me do the front piece and then I'll do all the yokes. I particularly will totally advocate you doing things with a piece, like one front, one back, instead of putting it all together and then doing the operations, because it's very difficult. Then you have a big shirt that you're hauling on top of this machine, and sometimes I've done it before and I'll do it again. I'm sewing something and I catch the other half of the garment that I don't want to be sewn on the stitch that I'm sewing. So this particular pattern, and sadly, I cannot go to the store and buy fusing, and I know neither can you. Therefore, no fusing is required. If you have it, by all means use it, but if you don't, it's fine. My pattern has a fold over, which I did this before we got here. I folded over the edge about 1/4 of an inch, folded it. There's a notch for the fold, and the notches match, and that's the center front. So I'm going to stitch this. This is the placket. I'm going to stitch it down, and because I want to see where I'm stitching it, I'm going to stitch it from the wrong side, because that's where I don't want my thread to come out. That's where the edge is, and I want it to be accurate. clean finish. Now, I did it this way because I did not have enough fabric to cut everything out of this khaki, so I cut my collar and cuffs in white. As a result, I'm using white as my top stitching. So I will do the other edge just to keep it consistent, and it'll be a nice decorative feature. I don't want to lose it. There's my top stitching. That's on one side of the front. Now I have the other side. And we'll do the yokes. There that is. Now, if you had the whole shirt attached, this would be a nightmare. It's just so much easier when you only have one piece to deal with. So try to remember that. So in essence, that's our placket. Now we're going to add this to the yoke. Now, you do need 2 yokes. Now, of course, because I didn't have enough fabric, I have 1 khaki and 1 white. I prefer to start it on the back yoke. I'm going to put the right sides together of the khaki. You can pin this. The only thing I'm going to pin is I'm going to make sure that I have that center front notch pinned. And please have the notch be clipped. And I might do 1 on the end and 1 in the middle. These would require a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, the good news is I'm going to top stitch everything on this shirt, but I don't think I need to if it's strictly decorative. I'm not going to take the time. Because my yokes will all have top stitching, but I'm not going to do it today. Then on the wrong side of the shirt, I'm going to put my other yoke. Pin those. The preliminary work is the most important, because once you have this all done correctly, you get the optimum results, because all you're going to do is sew a seam and it's going to be complete. Let's make it simple. The only important thing is that everything matches up, hence the notches. Okay, 1/2 inch seam allowance. And if you've seen my video before, you know that I don't have the lines here, but I know what a 1/2 inch looks like, and I'm just going to sew it. There's my center front notch. Right there's my pleat. my center back notch, I'm sorry. Now, excuse this for not matching because I had to do a little bit of finagling in order to get this cut because I didn't have enough fabric. So there are pieces that I had to make a little smaller just so I could fit them on like that. Well, there are the yokes. That's the back of the shirt. And this is the inside yoke lining. Now, we're going to do the fronts. We have 2 shoulders. Let's do the fronts. This is where it gets a little tricky. Now, what we have to do is we also have to make accommodations for this to go with this. I'm going to pin this. If you prefer to sew this first and sew this in 2 separate operations, that's fine too. Whatever it is that gets the job done, no one will know because everything will be completely closed up. But I prefer to do it all at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on this side here. It's a little strange. And I'm going to sew that a 1/2 inch. I didn't pin it, so I'm going to adjust it with my finger. So there's our one yoke, the yoke and the one front. Now, the last one is the trickiest one. Ouch. Sorry about that. Hey, nobody ever said it was going to be safe. I'm going to pin it because I know the twisty part is a little tricky, but you see how it works. I'm going to put this here first. Let's just say you want to do this the easier way for you, and we're just going to sew this one first, and then we'll sew the lining in a separate operation. This is your other option when you do these yokes. Okay, now where is the, okay, here it is. Now, technically, whatever you do, do not just sew this, because when you need to submit pictures, I want to see this to be finished the right way, like this. That's how I determine how to put things together. I fold them in a way that they're going to need to be folded, and I got to come in here and grab it. So as long as one end of it is correct, you'll be able to finish the rest accurately. So stick with that same 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's very tricky. Whatever you do, be very careful that nothing under here, you're sewing something that you don't want to be stitched. The last one is always the worst. And voila, complete. Now, of course, if you'd like, this would be a perfect time to press. But for the most part, the components, the shirt's all put together. The front and the back, that is. I've decided also that because we did a sewing sample regarding pockets, it's not required to put a pocket on this shirt, because I already know that you did pockets, so you know how to do it. This is more a practical execution of it. If you want to do them, please do it. If not, no. Now, I'm noticing that my facing kind of moves around a little, so I'm probably going to stay stitch it here so that I don't, when I'm sewing the collar on, I don't completely miss this and have raw edges showing. Just a stay stitch. Right on the edge. Not too far, because the seam allowance that you're going to place the collar on is only 1/4 of an inch. So we don't want to see stitches through it. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, the yokes and the shirts are together. Next, let's work on, we should work on the sleeve. The sleeve has that big placket on it. I'm going to just do one sleeve. I've pinned one on. Now, it depends on what pattern you are using. This is going to be the back of my shirt. And what I did was I put tailor tacks here, and I'm matching them up. Wait a minute. No, over here. Okay, my tailor tacks came out. Bear with me. I've never done one of these before. Then I'm going to turn and pivot, go across. And if your shirt does not have this as part of the pattern, just do your typical placket, which winds up to be finished about, 1/2 an inch. Oops, I put it on upside down. This is supposed to be up here. Holy crap. Let's do the other one. Let me do the collars. Now, be mindful. I did notice, these are the cuffs. The collar has an odd shape to it. Typically, a collar, this looks like the edge that you would want to sew. But on my pattern, it is. The notches are always going to be the part that gets attached to the neck. In this case, it's a collar stand. So I'm going to sew these. 1/4 of an inch is all you need for us. Whoa. thread to come out. 1/4 inch. Down and pivot. That's less than 1/4. I can move it over. I mean more. Sounds like my needle is dull. I need a new one. You know my little trick to do the corners. Fold it one way, fold it the other way, and then you'll have a perfect corner. If you choose to, just leave it the way it is. That would require you to press it. If not, you can always top stitch it. But I have my iron here, so I'm going to press mine. Trying to do it so I don't have to walk all around. Okay, there's my collar. Now at this point, if you were going to do top stitching, this would be a good point, a good time to do it. Okay. Now we have to attach it to the collar stand. Now I'm not really sure if this is the kind of a collar that you have. If you have the collar with the collar stand, this would be what you need to do. If you just strictly have a collar, I don't have the collar here, but I have the pattern of the shirt. If you have a pattern that looks like this, with a facing attached, the collar starts here, you don't have a collar band. You just put the collar here, you go all the way around the whole neck, but you start it and stop it at that notch. If you'd like, and you have any questions, please send me a picture of what you have. If you have questions, then I can tell you how to proceed. But I won't know until you ask me. Now, when it's time to put the collar in the stand, there's my notch. That's the first thing I'm going to look for. That is where I'm going to begin the collar. And I'm truly going to pin that. Now, where's my... wait a minute. Oh, I don't have a center back notch. Sorry. But because I have these other notches, they all match. Everything matches. It's not that difficult because the truth is, if the pattern is accurate, and I'm sure it is because you purchased it, you're going to be fine because I didn't even match anything and my collar winds up at that notch. So I'm in good shape. Now, the only other thing you must do is, like the yokes, you must do the collar stand on the other side as well. Because we're basically encasing that collar into that whole seam. This seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. And you know it's a curve, so go slowly. See, my notch goes right to the collar, so I'm in good shape. Technically, you don't want to have anything more than 1/4 because when you're in a curve and you're trying to get the pattern to lay flat, it never lays flat when it's curved and the seam allowance is more than 1/4. could see better without my glasses on. Okay. Take your time when you go around the curve. Now your collar and your collar stand are finished. Again, a little pressing would be a great idea, especially for just that little round part. But that can be done later. We don't need to do that now. I think for the most part, what I'm going to do are just most of the prep operations. So that would be the collar and the stand. We have that ready. Let's do the cuffs now. Again, there's no fusing. I didn't have fusing, so I know that if you don't have the fusing, it's not a problem. So on the cuff, you're going to do 3 sides. Quarter of an inch. Turn, pivot. I want the needle to be in the fabric when you turn it. I don't like it's a little too far over. Of course, there's 2 cuffs. I'm only going to show you the one because you know what to do with the other one. It's very simple. It's one of the simpler operations that there is. Again, with my corner trick, this would be so much nicer if it had fusing in it, but we can't all be choosy. So we would leave that for later. So that's another one of our operations complete. I won't do both cuffs rather. But I'm going to work on that sleeve again to see. I did this upside down. So you see, even I make mistakes. Now, unfortunately, I don't know which is the right or the wrong side here. So here are my tailor tacks. I used it in pink thread so you could see it. I'm going to put that. And I have these notches. See how they match those tailor tacks. Then I'm in good shape. And if you feel more comfortable, I don't have a pencil. You could draw the line and follow the line so that this would be accurate. I want to get it right to that spot right there. Okay. Pivot and turn and sew across to the other side of this tailor tack. If you choose, you could also put dots, pencil dots on your fabric. Just make sure you have them on the right side. Now, it's easy to make this accurate because the distance is going to be the same from this line to this line, across the entire placket. I mean, down the whole placket. Now, get my pink stitches out here. Right down the center, I cut to about a 1/2 inch, and then I pivot and I cut into the corner. Don't cut it all the way through. Then you got raw edges coming out of your placket. And this, now, this is the right side of your shirt. I'm going to try to do this without having to press it. First, I want the pink thread gone. I don't need it. I did do a little pre-pressing before we did this. So that and this corner are done, but this needs to be turned under. If that's the case, I'm going to want to just slit it a little bit. Nah, this is not right. I'm going to just do it. Now. Okay. I'm going to work on this later. I'm thinking that this is probably going to be a good amount of work for you to do. I'm going to investigate this to make sure, but in the grand scheme of things, when it's time for you to actually sew your collar, your sleeve, onto the, let me see which is, this is the right side, and my notches are, this is the front, so this is my right sleeve. Now, unfortunately, we have no overlock, so there's not going to be any finish on this. Use your discretion. If there's anything that you feel you would like to do to finish this off, like a pinking shears, or, stitching, you could stitch it twice, or a French seam. I don't advise using a French seam on this curved seam. It's really not, it's very difficult. There's my notches, I'm matching them, and I'm in good shape. I want the sleeve to be attached while the garment is open, no side seams closed. This is a man's shirt, and this is the way it would be done. Okay, there we go. We have another notch that matches. Okay. I'm going to make sure that there's ease in here, so I'm going to push it through with my fingers. Cotton is good that way. It'll work with you. And of course, this is a 1/2 inch. I know that commercial patterns tell you to do 5/8 of an inch. I would say just do a 1/2 inch, just because that's what we're used to, and I don't want to confuse you. And my notches are there, they match, and I'm going to be good in this sleeve. Now, once I figure, okay, so there is one of the sleeves is set. The placket, I need to investigate. This placket needs to be on the other side. And once you do the plackets on both sleeves, I think you're in good shape. You can sew this sleeve on like I just did, and then sew the entire sleeve and side seam. And I think today that's as far as we need to go. If you choose, like I said, we already discussed this when we were still in class, this would be the perfect spot for you, this whole sleeve and body of the shirt, to do a French seam. If you feel comfortable, just go ahead and do it. It makes sense. As long as your fabric is not thick. My fabric is definitely not thick, and a French seam would work quite nicely. So if you feel comfortable doing all this, the last thing we'll do is we'll sew the collar and the cuffs on. The placket will be, I'll fix the placket and I'll show you that again. And then we can sew everything together and the shirt will more than likely be done. I can start the collar if you'd like, because maybe that'll give you a jump on things. Truthfully, it doesn't matter what side you sew as the right side, but it's only one of these that you're going to want to sew. Again, start the very edge and sew it 1/4 of an inch. Make sure pinning it would be good. Now, I've decided to sew this on the wrong side, because then when I do the other side, I can stitch on the edge of that side, because I can see where I'm stitching, and it will make it much more accurate. Now, these have some very interesting notches in them. This is the notch that's going to match it to this seam of the yoke. So we're going to get this matched perfectly where it needs to be. Do me a favor, when you do your notches, make sure that they're not bigger than the seam allowance, because then you're going to have some nice frayed material. And this is something that I changed in order to get the, so I'm going to have to pull it a little so the notches will match. There we go. The notches are perfect. Notches match. If you feel more comfortable pinning this, then please, by all means, do so. And this, remember, has to just go to the edge. I know this is a little tricky because it's really it's close work. So my vote is then it's probably, I'm not going to do this today, but it's in your best interest to press that. And then you can sew that right down, and you can sew it right on the edge, and you'll have a perfect a perfect collar band. So I think, that being said, I think we covered quite a few operations that, you see the shirt is practically together. It doesn't require a whole lot more, but I would rather do it in 2 separate videos for you to get this information, work with it, and then feel comfortable about the next set of operations when I send the next video. So, do your best. Again, work with what you've got. In the grand scheme of things, you'll submit pictures, and I have to understand that you can't overlock anything, you can't finish it off neatly. There's a great chance of you not being able to use fusing, it's not a problem. We have to work with what we have. So please, do the best you can. Good luck with it, and have a little bit of fun if you can. Thanks.